Okay, what we're starting here is the account of Joseph H. Jackson in Nauvoo. When he got to know Joseph Smith, became one of his inner circle, joined the Council of 50, and witnessed the spiritual wife system, and rode with the Danites. It's really quite interesting, and you won't hear it in Gospel Doctrine, that's for sure. Joseph Smith, at that time, we know, was secretly practicing a spiritual wife doctrine that we're going to read about here, which he refers to in his statement when William Law had accused him of adultery. And publicly, Joseph Smith stated in May of 1844 the following, or close to it, since I'm not looking at it, but we've read it before. What a thing it is to accuse a man of adultery. They say I have 7 wives, but I can find but one. William Law has accused me of adultery, but I can prove him and all people that say anything like that as perjurers. It's easily read. We've read it before. I'm just not going to go to it right now. So we know that Joseph Smith denied publicly any sort of non-monogamous practices, as well as Hiram preached around that time that it was absolutely just a heretical lie that was being preached, even though Joseph and his inner circle were practicing it, as we know. And even on the church's family search, they show women sealed to him as supposedly as wives, and I think 11 of them that they show were actually married to other men. So there's just contradiction after contradiction. Of course, Section 132 doesn't allow anything about taking other men's wives or sharing other men's wives. And of course, he had never submitted Section 132. As we said, he denied anything having to do with other women publicly. And it was against the law in every state that he was residing in. And of course, we're supposed to believe that God told him to do this, breaking not only the law of the land, but his marriage covenants, the terms upon which his wife contracted with him to be married as a mutually exclusive marital relationship. So God told him, just go ahead and violate the terms upon which your wife has agreed to be your wife, and if she doesn't like it, she's to be destroyed, she's damned, in Section 132. But curiously, of course, we see he never submitted that to the church. He denied the practice. He did not tell the truth. And so people like Joseph Jackson or William Law, yet Orson Hyde's wife wound up as one of his special lady friends. When Orson Hyde was on his mission, just like Orson Pratt, Joseph Smith told her she needed to be one of his spiritual wives, that the Lord had revealed it unto him, and so she wound up being sealed to Joseph Smith. So how's that work out for Orson Hyde and his family? So if you leave on a mission, you better count on Joseph going after your wife. So when it comes to apostles' wives, you went for Orson Pratt's wife and she blew him off. You went for Orson Hyde's wife and got to her. He went for Heber Kimball's wife and wound up with his little girl. He went for Sidney Rigdon's daughter and got told to forget it. He went for President William Law's wife, and, well, eventually that led to the events that landed him in Carthage and ended his life. I think a missed word there. It was connubial bliss, not concubinal bliss, he proposed with Sarah Pratt, I believe. So, the church seems to affirm relationships and call them wives when there's no possible way they could legally be his wife. And then, of course, his wife caught him in the barn impregnating the foster girl who was staying at their home as a nanny, 16-year-old Fanny Alger, long before any of these purported revelations. Taking into account the record of Joseph Smith's forthrightness, his truthfulness, his desire to be honest, true, chaste, benevolent, and to honor and sustain and obey and uphold the laws of the land, let's see what Joseph Jackson had to say. And his story tends to be corroborated
by the wives of the apostles, and some of the apostles who were offended by this, and many others. So let's take a look. We'll start reading from this very interesting account. Okay, the following narrative of my experience in Nauvoo is submitted to the public in hopes that it may call attention to the character of the iniquities practiced in that city in the name of religion. I am aware that such is the nature of the disclosures made in the following pages, such the blackness of the record, that it will be difficult to induce men to believe that such depravity could possibly exist. By what follows, however, it will be perceived that my motives in going to Nauvoo were to gain the confidence of the prophet, that I might discover and disclose to the world his real designs and the nature of his operations. To do this, I was obliged to practice dissimulation and to seem to be a fit tool for him to work with. Some may say that such conduct on my part was not excusable, but let such bethink them that the secret designs and workings of this heaven-daring wretch could never have been made public only by such means as I employed. So you can choose to believe or disbelieve this man, but it is corroborated by other people who seem to have impeccable reputations as well. And let's just see what he has to say. The end justifies the means. Many of the instances on record in which bands of robbers or counterfeiters had so organized themselves that they were unable to baffle the closest scrutiny of the law. In such cases and instances, it has been the common practice, especially in Europe, to employ men to become seeming accomplices, that they might thus be enabled to disclose the information necessary for a conviction. This was my object, and the inducement that prompted my action will be found in what follows. I might say that John D. Lee tends to corroborate some of these things as well. He was a follower of Brigham Young as well, and a Danite. I tell nothing, and both of these guys were the Council of 50. I tell nothing more than what I have seen and heard in Nauvoo. I have colored nothing, nor set down aught in malice. Many of my statements can be corroborated by abundance of testimony. I am content, however, at present to give my story, and if contradicted, I can follow it up by proof, such as no reasonable man will doubt. The question may be asked, how is it possible for so corrupt a man as Joe Smith is represented to be, could ever have attained so complete control as he unquestionably had over the minds of the honest portion of his followers? I confess, the question puzzles me. No man who has never seen the influence of blind fanaticism over the human mind can imagine the effects it will produce. There were hundreds of men in Nauvoo who, I believe, from what I have seen, had Joe Smith commanded them to commit murder in the name of the Lord, they would have believed that they were doing God's will, God's service, and obeying Him. I will leave the philosophy of this for the consideration of moralists. My business is to state the facts. There's one thing peculiar that will be observed by the attentive reader, and that is that all Joe Smith's commands, whether in public or in private, were delivered in the name of the Lord. In public, before his people, he spoke in the name of the Lord, and in his secret councils, if he desired the assassination of his enemy, it was the will of the Lord, that the persecutors of the Church of Jesus Christ should be put out of the way. And then, in the name of the Lord, he concocted the vilest plans for murder. Thus, assassination, robbery, and seduction were carried on by this blasphemous wretch in the name of the Most High. The writing of the following pages was commenced previous to the late disturbances in Hancock County, which resulted in the death of the two Smiths. I regret that the publication was not made while they were alive. As it is, however, I trust that what is said will convince the world that whatever may be thought of the manner of their death, nevertheless, they richly deserve to die. The experience with the Mormons was but for a short period, yet, my experience, he says, yet much corruption and depravity, as I witnessed, I did not before believe existed on the face of the earth. Okay, so here we start the narrative. he's got a pretty strong opinion from what he's seen. And we'll see why. You can choose to believe or not believe him. Starting the story. Before visiting Nauvoo, I heard much of this famous city and the character of its inhabitants. Such was the contrariety of reports afloat that it seemed difficult to form any settled opinion concerning the prophet or his followers. Where I had been, however, the opinion seemed to prevail that they were a pack of abandoned scoundrels, leagued together for the basest of purposes. In passing down the Mississippi in the fall of 1842, I determined to stop in Nauvoo. My object was partly to find business, and partly to gratify curiosity. With the location of the city, I was delighted, but as frequent descriptions have already gone abroad, I will not stop here to expatiate either on its beauties or the advantages of its position. At the time I landed, October 10th, 1842, there was great trouble amongst the saints, in consequence of a demand having been made by the governor of Missouri for the prophet for being accessory to the attempted assassination of Governor Boggs. My visit to the city at that time, being a stranger and out of business, induced the people, as I afterwards learned to believe that I was a spy from Missouri in quest of evidence against Smith. Many men, who I have since learned belonged to the Danite band, visited me at my boarding house and asked all manner of questions in relation to my business in the city. Deeming these inquiries impertinent, I did not condescend to answer them, but they did not cease their importunities. At length, being disgusted with the indignant at their proceedings, I abruptly cut their acquaintance. After this, I observed that I was closely watched, but did not know the reason, until informed by a friend that the prophet thought me a spy. I determined then to give no satisfaction, but to pursue a silent policy. Sometime in November, I was helping to haul some goods from the river that belonged to Messrs. Rawlinson and Finch. I was in company with both Mr. Finch and a man from Keokuk. Okay, I'm going to stop there and take it up on the second video of this. The account of Joseph H. Jackson in Nauvoo.
Well, there we go. Head to the next video. You're watching MTV Library, Mormon Truth Video Library, on the Dodger Game channel. So we'll find that this series, Joseph Jackson testimony, basically a small book, gets pretty interesting. There's a lot of adventure and a lot of very intriguing things that went on which have been whitewashed in LDS history by the Correlation Department of the Church. But you'll enjoy this. It's interesting. So click into the channel if you don't already have the links for the rest of the 10 or so episodes of this. Channel buttons right next to the subscribe button down at the bottom of the description in the video.